All right. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the workshop blocks. Today we have Nikki Lyons. She is a fall 2005 initiate and life member of the Zeta Kappa chapter at the unsinkable Albany State University. Nikki served in various leadership roles in her chapter as a committee chair, corresponding secretary, recording secretary, and president. She is a member of TBSAA and the SEDAA, and along with being a chapter visitation assistant, serves as a member of the curriculum committee. Nikki has earned degrees in early childhood education and instructional technology, and she's beginning doctoral studies in mass communications at the University of Florida. She currently resides in the Gainesville, Florida, where she works at a quality assurance coordinator at UF. In her role, Nikki is responsible for leading the university's online course review process and assisting with faculty support and development. She spends her free time reading, listening to podcasts, watching true crime content, chasing food trucks, and taking field trips. She's going to be presenting the workshop, and here's the description. Are you still feeling the COVID-19 struggle? Is your chapter constantly having to relearn how to be a chapter year after year? In this workshop, Nikki will provide some foolproof tips and tricks on how to function smoothly as a chapter, using her years of experience on the chapter level and also as a top-notch chapter visitation assistant for the sorority.
Right. That was a smooth introduction. I usually fumble through mine. So goals. So hey everybody, hey. I want to let you know I'm on a couple screens here, so you may see my eyes wander around a little bit. But what I've tried to do is ensure that I've got the presentation pulled up, and I also have the chat. So if at any point during the presentation you have questions, please feel free to raise a hand or to drop a message in the chat, and I'll do what I can to answer as we go through that. I'll be moving through pretty quickly just because I want to get through all of the content for you. So if there are questions that are still left over afterwards, please feel free to email me. We'll put my email in the chat for you. And just so you aren't trying to scramble to capture all of the screens and everything, I have a link and a QR code that we can scan at the end of the presentation for those of you who want to take the information back to your chapters. Okay, so let's get started with building your chapter. All right, our goals for this afternoon are they're threefold. So first, we're going to identify areas to perform wellness checks on your chapter's overall health. We're going to talk about some strategies that you can use to design a blueprint for improvement, and then share some tools and some ideas that you can incorporate into your action plans as you rebuild your chapters. Because often one of the things that happens when we go to workshops, these people have all these great ideas, and then you're like, how am I supposed to do things? We're going to help you do the things, okay? So as we're going through some of the wellness checks and some of the strategies, I want you to think about a couple things. So the first is, what are some areas where you've had some setbacks as a chapter, okay? And what are some areas where it feels like you're not performing optimally? Like you feel like, all right, we're doing good, but we could be doing better, all right? Think about those. And I also want you to remember that whatever it is that you guys may be saying, oh, child, it's hard, it's rough out here in these streets, you're not alone. There are some trends that we've noticed across the country with our chapters. And so this presentation is kind of structured to provide that for everyone. So it's tools that'll help you power through. Okay. So I want you to think about this in two pieces. So the first is building a sustainable infrastructure, all right? And an infrastructure is going to be the physical and the organizational structures that you need for the operation of an enterprise, okay? If you think about your chapter as an enterprise, okay? And we've got 5 areas that you could consider when you're evaluating the health of your chapter. And then the second part is the engineering. This is going to be where you are designing and building structure so that your chapter will continue to be able to grow, that you'll be able to maintain the things that you're doing well as they are now, and preserve what you have, okay? So we're gonna look at it in those 2 parts. So the first piece is to go through our wellness check and the 5 areas that we can check for chapter health. So before I jump into these, if you would, please feel free to drop into the chat what you think these 5 areas could possibly be. Like, where is it that we might want to say, we're doing good, we can do a little better, or, oh, child might be struggling. Drop some of those in the chat. Oh, retention, come on. Come on, financials. Focus on 5 and service. Okay. I see some people who may have peeked at my slides ahead of time, but all right, I'm not gonna be upset. Y'all keep dropping things in the chat for me there, and I'm gonna go ahead and show you the answers. So the 5 areas that you want to check. Come on, Sisterhood, right there. The first is chapter operations, membership ed, and that's both pre-membership and post-membership. Service and special projects, kind of lump those 2 together, even though they could be separate. Financial health, and then sisterhood. Okay, and you can notice, for those who may be like, wait a minute, something's interesting there. It may be that each of these align with an office within your chapter's exec board. So you may already have some folks who can kind of take the lead on making some changes and some adjustments. So as we go through the presentation, I'm going to ask you some questions that you could ask yourselves, all right? And you'll be able to say, as we're going through and we're having our discussions as a group, does this apply to us? Is this an area that we really need to work on? All right, so the first is chapter operations. We've broken that down into 3 pieces. We've got policies and procedures, we've got paperwork, and we've got responsibilities. All right, so if I'm gonna nutshell all of these bullets that I've got here for you, what are the policies that we have in place in order to help us function as a chapter? What are the procedures that we have in place to handle our business? Because essentially we are businesses. And then the next is paperwork. Do we know the forms, the documents, the payments that have to be remitted? Do we know when they are due? Do we know how we are supposed to complete them, where we're supposed to complete them? Is this something that we communicate to each new group as they come in? Or is it something that you just kind of find out as you find it out? And then, do we know what each person is supposed to do? And are we holding each other accountable for doing the things that we're supposed to do? When we think about membership education, we've got MEP, all right? That is the bread and the butter of membership education. And think of it almost as a syllabus, and I'll say that again later. What are we supposed to learn? When are we supposed to learn it? And how are we going to be assessed on what we learned? Are you as a chapter comfortable with overture? And somebody in the chat just, drop real quick for me. What is overture? If I hear that, what does that mean? What is that? Retention, as Jaden mentioned in the chat, like, do we retain our members? Is it that we recruit large membership classes, but then by the time that someone would have matriculated and get their degree, are they still actively participating in the chapter, or have they kind of faded off into the mist? And that rolls into the continuing membership education. How do we affirm our organizational values and purposes? Do we make sure that we are connected to who Tau Beta Sigma is, or are we out here just kind of doing our own thing because that's what we feel like we want to do? How do we work on leadership development? Because it's not just about recognizing leaders in our programs, but also continuing to help them be better leaders so that they can then take those skills and move forward through life with those. So one of the things I want to show you is a membership progression. And if we're doing our part to really help leaders grow to be better, it's kind of a growth cycle. So you think about your MCs, okay? They're learning about our organization, they're learning about what we do, how we do, and why we do it, and they're learning about how the chapter itself works. So that when they become new members, they can then take the time to discover what interests them and where they would like to find their place in the chapter being, how they would like to contribute, okay? Because once they identify those interests, they become active participants in the chapter's operations, in the chapter's activities. And they get to really feel like they own some of the work that we're doing, and they're going to embrace it more. And then ultimately, that's going to lead folks to become leaders within the chapter and within the organization. And you'll notice at that point, the difference between a leader and an MC is they're coming through and they're now creating opportunities and creating experiences for others to participate in. So we want to make sure that we're helping everyone to realize that potential fully, so that we're all getting what we want out of being members of the organization. Next, we've got our service and our special projects. So we know, okay, Tom at the City National Honor Band Sorority provides service to the collegiate band. That's what we do. But are we aware of what our specific programs and music communities need? Because that's how we're going to evaluate our effectiveness. Are we providing the service that is most impactful to our program? Or are we just doing other things that we're kind of seeing people doing? And so one of the things we could do is kind of have a needs analysis of what our program needs. Let's talk to our band's leadership and find out, are we strategically placed as TBS in the best way to give our band what it needs? When we look at special projects, are we participating in national and district programming? Or is it just, hey, we make sure that the band has water, honey, we make sure those uniforms get hemmed, that's it, we're not doing anything extra. Are we actually delving into some of those additional purposes that we stand for? Are we connected to information channels? Social media, do you follow, Tau Beta Sigma on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter? Like, are we connected? Do we listen to the podcast? Did we even know that there was a podcast? That kind of thing. Do you have unique programming that your chapter does that you think other chapters would benefit from knowing about? If you do, are you sharing that with other people? Are you engaging on social media with other chapters? Are you submitting articles to the podium? Are you submitting to your district publications? Are we being insular, or are we really getting out there and connecting with others? The next would be financial health. This one is a big one. And if I were to break it down into one sentence, do you know how the monetary resources of your chapter flow in and out? Do you know what that looks like? Can you explain it to someone else? Can you have a conversation around your chapter's finances? If no, we got a problem. So it comes down to, do we even know what our chapter budget looks like? Do we know who's responsible for making sure that our budget is in order, making sure that everyone adheres to it? That's a big thing that we have to be able to do. And then fundraising is a natural part of budgeting. How are we going to bring in funds so that we can finance our service, our events, and our activities? Is this something that we feel comfortable doing, or is this something that we tend to struggle with? And is that limiting our ability to do our jobs? And the next would be sisterhood. Are we embracing sisterhood in our chapter, or do we just feel like coworkers? When you think about people who you're close to, and you think about people who you kind of just keep at a distance, what does that look like? Is that how we're interacting with other people? I know my coworkers, they're great folks, but I'm not going to deal with them on that same level as I would someone who I consider a sister. And so that would impact the level of work that we're doing. When we look at the amount of time that we spend together, the work that we have to do, it helps if we're connected to each other and we feel like there's a level of trust and we feel like there's a level of support. And that's both within our chapter and within our organization. Do we have relationships with people in other chapters? Or is it kind of like, hey, child, we are the Chi Nu Omega chapter. That means no new friends, period. Okay, we are us. That's it. We don't want to talk to other people. Can't sit with us. Can't sit here. All right. So are we those kids, or are we really trying to make those connections? Because honestly, when you branch out and you start meeting folks from all across the country, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've been with you forever. And it's something that you do, and that happens once you begin branching out a little bit. So when you go to district convention, when you go to national convention, when you go to area workshops, it's a time to network and exchange information and get to know people. All right, so I've given you those 5 key areas where you can check for chapter wellness. Please keep those here because I'm going to ask for them later, and I may or may not have an imaginary prize to give to someone who can recall them. So one of the things I did in the presentation is I included some quotes that I feel are relevant to the strategies and the ideas that we have. So we got the wellness check. We know where we stand. All right. We feel like we may have some areas of growth. All right. So if that's the case, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to do it? Honey, when are we supposed to even start? All right. And the biggest thing that you have to remember is that in order to make change, you do it one step at a time. You cannot do everything all at once, all together. We cannot, because that will lead to you being stressed out. It will lead to you burning out, and then you will be no good to yourself or to anyone else. All right. So it's about getting to that place where we say, here's what is most important for us to work on, and we're going to do that. All right. So we are going to look at some practical design and building strategies that you can use for your chapter. All right. Because the biggest thing is to make this something that you can use and you can do. All right. To allow you all to be the architects of your growth and then engineer your growth to make it happen. All right. And so I believe we've got 8 of those. We love a theme. The first is to reconnect. All right. Effective teamwork begins and it ends with communication. Everybody has to be on the same page. Everybody needs to be in the same book. And sometimes we find instances where no one is on the same page about what it is that needs to be done. And that leads to confusion. Confusion makes it harder to do your job. All right, so the first thing I want you to do is communicate clearly with each other. That's going to require honesty. It's going to require transparency. It requires a sense of vulnerability, all right? And open-mindedness. Because in order to have the conversations that you need to have so that you can decide, here's what we as a chapter want to do to grow, you've got to be able to step back and say, here's where we're not very strong. And so what can these conversations look like? One of the tools that we have that we want to share with you is called the tribe method of communication, of sharing a conversation. Because essentially, if we break it down into these 5 pieces, you're more likely to have a more productive conversation. And this is also helpful because you want everyone in the chapter to participate in finding solutions. That's going to ensure that we've got fresh ideas, we've got fresh perspectives, and when everyone feels like they are included, everyone is more likely to buy in to doing the work. And that's one of the key pieces. We need everyone to be involved. So one of the things that you do is to start telling about what it is you're feeling. So you're going to use I statements. I statements are going to come from a personal place. Whereas if we use you statements, it seems to come as an attack and folks shut down, they get defensive, and they don't want to hear what you've got to say. The next piece is to use reflective listening. So when you reflect what you're hearing back to the other person, it's not about repeating what they said to you word for word. It's more so about paraphrasing what they heard as you understand it. And one of the things about reflective listening is if you're doing that, if you're actively listening, you're not thinking about a response to what they're saying. You are trying to process what they are giving to you. When you all are doing that, you can then identify what is important. What is the real issue that needs to get resolved? Because if we're just addressing a symptom and we're not addressing the actual thing that's making us ill, we don't get better. We're just going to keep masking different symptoms. When you brainstorm possible solutions, work collaboratively. Sometimes you may have chapters where it's large and you have a lot of people, and so it won't be conducive to have 35 people in a room trying to have this conversation. But if you break it down into smaller groups, or if your e-board has a conversation, brainstorms, then takes that to everyone and asks for their feedback on it, that can still work for you. It's about making sure that everyone's taking part. and then evaluate those solutions and try one. You can always make adjustments later if it doesn't work. If something's not working for you, you say, we tried it, write it down, we pass it off, we try something else. All right, the next thing is to rebound. So it can be hard to deal with the change that comes, especially when it is something that completely knocks you off your feet, okay? But the important thing to do is to stay the course and to put the time and to put the effort in, because eventually it will become ingrained into your chapter standard operating procedures. It will become ingrained into the norms. And this is just what we do. We practice excellence. We do excellence. And so sometimes when you're doing that, you have to do it with the understanding that you may not see the best when it arrives. You may just be laying the foundation for the best. And so your future chapter members may get to enjoy the fruits of the labor more so than you. And that's a sacrifice that we would make just to ensure that everyone's okay. So ways to do that are to identify the strengths and the weaknesses. And we have a tool for that: start, stop, and keep. And my friends, it's in Overture. So you don't have to go out and do your Googles to find it. Hit that BPM to go out and find Overture. You're going to go to Module 7, Lesson 6. And this is an activity that you all can do together to help you take ownership of your chapter's growth. And so everyone will have the ability to weigh in on your chapter projects. Look at the past year. Look at the past 2 years. What are the things that you all want to start doing based on what you had in the past? What is it that you want to stop doing? If it is not working for you, don't keep doing it. And what are the things you want to keep? These are hallmarks of our chapter. These are traditions. Yes, let's keep them, but maybe we modify them a little bit to make them work for us, okay? And when it comes to transparency, all right, use the points you identify in this to set your goals for improvement, all right? And then share that information with your sisters. So one of the tools that we have for you is a SWOT analysis, all right? And this tool is designed to help you strategically think through internal and external forces that are going to have positive and negative impacts on your success. When you identify those things, you can then plan and prioritize your movements to make the most of your strengths, both individually and as a group, and neutralize your weaknesses. Sometimes we can't completely remove them. So if at the least we can neutralize them, that's going to help us to grow stronger. So the questions that are listed in here are just a few examples of what you can ask yourselves, and you can feel free to search out for some others. There's some really great ones online that you can find. This analysis can be done in small groups, and then it can be done as a whole group. You can do it in small groups and then take all of your things back up to a whole group and discuss it. But the most important thing to do when you're doing something like this is to document your answers. So have some paper or some flip charts or some whiteboards, Word documents, so that you can keep track of the things that you're noting. When you're doing a SWOT analysis, you want to go from the upper left corner down. Almost if you're reading, you're going to do the letter Z. So things that are helpful, that are internal, and then things that may be harmful that are internal. You're going to do your S and your W. And you'll go down, things that are external, that are opportunities for you, things that are external, that are threats. And then you'll do your O and your T. And those you will be able to use those to help you guide your planning. The next thing is to refocus. Whenever there's a transition, it often puts us into what we think about in organizational development as like a storming period. And that's when you feel like it's just a lot going on. There's a lot happening and you don't know what to do. So that's also a great time to begin establishing your new norms, all right? And this is one thing I want to impress upon you all. This is a time that you can establish your new normal, and you can make it and design it to be anything that you want. Think about who your chapter is right now. who you want to be now and who you want to be in the future. Establish things that will help you to be that. Yes, the past we've built upon that and it's helped us to get to where we are, but we don't have to hang on to and hold on to everything from the past. Sometimes you got to purge stuff. Sometimes you've got to rearrange priorities. Sometimes you've got to create new habits, and it's okay to do that. So in order to do so, you're going to do three things. You're going to set some goals. You're going to establish priorities. So of those goals, which one's the most important? And then put accountability measures into place. And so that's going to help us to refocus all of our efforts. All right. SMART goals, show of hand reactions, or little, note in the chat. How many of my friends have heard of SMART goals before? Okay. Thank you. Oh, okay. It's lighting up over here, y'all. It's the 4th of July. All right, very good. So now that I know that y'all know, I'll put you to work a little bit. I've got 5 letters. I've got an S, an M, an A, an R, and a T. Could you please kindly let me know, what do these letters stand for? What is this acronym? What does it mean? What am I supposed to do? Do that while I take a little sip. All right, Dejanay, I see you, friend. Come on. We have our S, we have our specific, we have our measurable. Right now I've got a SM. I've got some SM. All right, come on, attainable, achievable. Yes, that A is interchangeable. Yes, relevance, and timely. All right, teamwork. Come on, group. I see y'all. I see you. Come on, Jay. Come on, Sarah, from the iPad. SMART goals. We want to make sure that these goals are SMART. And friends, limit yourselves to 5. 5, I'm being generous in giving you that many. Honestly, you should probably keep it down to 3. But we want to make sure that we are being realistic. What are no more than 5 things that we can work on? Otherwise, we overwhelm ourselves. All right. And then we're going to prioritize what is most important to work on. What do we want to focus the most of our energy toward? And I've got a tool for you for that. And then the next piece is building in accountability measures. A lot of the times we come up with great ideas. There are things we want to do. There's stuff we want to make happen. And then everybody gets an assignment and we're all excited. And then as that excitement starts to die down, people start to disappear. And then we're looking around and we're like, hey, who was supposed to turn in this? Or who's supposed to go reserve the building? Or who was supposed to go buy the snacks? And we don't know, because we haven't built in an accountability measure. And so this is a way to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, okay? All right, so the Eisenhower Matrix is probably one of my favorite things that I'm going to share with you all today. This is a way for you to make decisions about the work that you're going to do or the tasks that you're going to take on, all right? Similar words. Similar to the SWOT analysis that I just showed you, you'll do your Eisenhower Matrix, letter Z, all right? If someone were to present to you a task, hey, we need someone to bake cupcakes for students in a 2nd grade classroom in a local elementary school. Okay, that's the task that's been presented to you. You have to now make a decision about whether this is something that you need to take on. You've got to say, how important is this? And how immediately do we need to address it? All right. Based on that, you can make your decision. So anything that goes into the do box is something that you need to complete, and you need to complete it as soon as possible. There's a close deadline. All right. Anything that you need to decide on is something that you can put off to later. You can schedule a time to discuss it. You can schedule a time to do it, and then you take it on because it's still important. The next would be delegation. Sometimes there's a task that's really good, but it might not be for you. It might not be for you. If someone's got to make a deposit to the chapter's account, that's something that should go to the treasurer. So even if you're the president and you're asked to do it, you could delegate that to another responsible party. And then the last thing may be, you might have to delete it. This may be something that's not for us. It's like, yeah, baking cupcakes for the kids, that would be fun. However, that does not meet our chapter goal, that does not meet an organizational goal, we don't necessarily have time for that right now. If we were to take it on, it would stress us out. We may need to delete that and say, you know what, we would love to, but we can't. But thank you for offering. Please consider us in the future. We may be able to help you. Come on, time management. Y'all, it's all connected. It's interconnected. Okay. And y'all, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. I mean, Benjamin, he knew back when he said it. It is still true to this day. It doing the work ahead of time saves you so much time on the back end. Help yourself out. And not just to plan, but to plan and to organize with intention. All right. You waste more energy and more time trying to do when you are doing without direction or without organization. That's when you just out here all over the place. We're just trying to make it. We're just trying to get by. We don't want you to try to get by. We want you to be able to operate in a way that makes the most of your time and the most of your energy, because you're not just members of this organization. You're not just members of your band programs, your students, your friends, you are family members. Some of you have jobs. You have so many other things that you need to take care of. We want you to be able to do that so that you're functioning optimally, okay? So this one's really heavy. We're gonna talk a lot about resources and tools that are in place to help y'all. All right. So the first, we're gonna make plans, friend. We're not gonna make excuses, okay? Because we don't use those. All right. Those are tools of the incompetent, and that is not us. All right. So the first thing we want to do is be very clear about what it is we want to accomplish. We need everybody to understand. Here's what we're setting out to do, and here's how we're gonna do it. All right, we're gonna outline that task, those 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why, and then we're gonna throw in our friend how, okay? And diligence now, like I said, it prevents the headaches later. It is so helpful when you just go ahead and you get the things done. Some of the tools that you could use to organize your efforts, tick these off in your head if you've got them. A chapter email and cloud storage, semesterly calendars, an MEP, a budget. If you've got meeting agendas and you use them, if you use event planning documents, if you have officer notebooks, if we don't quite have these things, friends, we need to get them. Oh, you know what? Let me just go ahead. I need to pause for the cause. TV Sigma email accounts that are attached to the cloud storage. If you do not have one, we need to create one. We need to make it happen. As I mentioned earlier about being connected to the mothership and getting the messages and being connected, friends, get that email account. And one of the most important reasons why is, yes, we may have our chapter president and our secretary who've got all of the things, but once these folks graduate and they go get themselves their jobs, they're in their career, they go to graduate school, those things go with them. So if all of their messages live in their personal accounts, they leave with them, we don't have them. And we want to make sure that we have the records, okay? So if you have something like a chapter email, all of the communications can be sent from those 1 or 2 accounts. That way you can keep track of everything. We know who was contacted, we know when they were contacted, we know when our messages went out. And the cloud storage can serve as a repository for your chapter files. Your chapter budget could live in the chapter's cloud storage. It does not have to live on your treasurer's personal computer. Because friend, they hit the lotto and they moved to Tahiti, those folks not gonna be worried about trying to get you a budget. They're gonna be trying to budget their fun in the sun. All right, keep those things where everybody can access them. The next will be calendars. All right, use a calendar to schedule events and use it to communicate with everyone about the events. It's going to lessen the likelihood of double booking. It's going to lessen the likelihood of forgetting about things that we need to take care of. And it will help you see the big picture of what it is that your chapter is doing. That way we know we don't have 6 different events planned in October and 2 planned in November. That's real. There's an imbalance there that we don't want you to create for yourselves. The next will be your MEPs. These are a required part of the membership education process. We don't want someone to have to tell you, please cease and desist because you did not submit your MEP. We don't want you to have to live that life. So think about it like the syllabus to one of your courses. At the beginning of the semester, your instructors make sure that you have access to your syllabus. It is the same thing. It is telling you all of the details of what it is that you're going to learn, when you're going to learn it, and when you will be expected to know all of those things. MEP is that same thing. And use your MEP in conjunction with your calendar. Sync them, line them up. They should be best friends. The next is your chapter budget. Mentioned it earlier, but you want to keep track of the income and the expenditures. All right. Ideally, you will have your chapter budget for the whole school year. Then you'll have one for fall semester, one for spring semester. All right. And both of those two little ones roll up to that big one. All right. Sometimes you're going to have individual events or officers who may need to have smaller budgets as well. But guess what? Those should roll up to that larger budget. We don't want you to be in situations where you have to scale back or cancel an activity because you overspent somewhere else. That's why it's important that everyone in the chapter have an understanding of what a budget is and how it works. And then they're held accountable for staying within the budget that's allotted to them. All right. If you are allotted $50 to spend on decorations, please don't take yourself to Party City and spend $150. We got a problem. That's not what we allotted for. Okay. So when everyone has an understanding, it's easier for your treasurer and your Ways and Means Committee to ensure that everything's in order. Okay. The next is meeting agendas and minutes. If you are meeting, like if you are having a general chapter business meeting, there should be an agenda. And there should be minutes, period. 1 and 2, period. They should exist. Use those to stay on task. Use that to ensure that topics are being addressed and not forgotten. And then use that to communicate all of the decisions you made, the discussions you had. Oh, question. How long after your general business meeting should you have to wait to receive the minutes from that meeting? How quickly should someone be getting those to you? When would we be concerned if we haven't received them? Y'all already know, drop it in the chat.
You should be getting them right after, since you should be writing them during it, correct?
I mean, ideally, if we meet, we walk out and they're sent, that would be nice. But we can give them a little grace period. That's it. 24 to 48 hours. 48 hours within 2 days, those minutes should hit everyone's inbox. Everybody should have them. We should know what's going on. Because the longer it takes for those minutes to go out, the longer it takes for the information to be shared. So if there are actions that people need to take regarding decisions made in that meeting, the longer you tell them they got to do it, the longer it's going to take them to do that. So if you've got time-sensitive things that need to be done, get that information out fast. All right. And then the next piece would be planning documents. All right. These are going to help you cover all the finer details of putting an event together. All right. And another added bonus is when you have to fill out your fall and your spring activity reports, all of the information is in these planning documents. One of them is in the chapter operations handbook. It's like called the event planning worksheet. If you use that, when it's time to fill out those forms, click, copy, paste, because we've already filled it out. We are putting the information there. We have saved ourselves minutes. Okay. So you want to make sure that you've got the documentation in place. So the next would be to have resources and to source them. All right. Being prepared is half the victory. And you know, when you are prepared, you feel a little different. You move a little different. You walk different. You occupy space in a room differently when you know you are ready. So we want you to walk in, head up, chest poked out. You're ready because you've done what you're supposed to do. All right. So there's 3 types of resources that you can use. All right. You've got your capital resources, you've got your human resources, and you've got strategic resources. This is one that's not often thought about. So when we look at our capital resources, all right, we're talking about money. We are talking about materials. We are talking about anything that, tangibly is going to help us function effectively. And some of those ones that we've got out here right now, we've got our chapter and our national constitutions. That's number one. That's the basis. We have our tvsigma.org website and the resources there. There is a resources tab, my friend. And there you'll find things like the CHOPS handbook. That's where you're going to find a link to OMRS so that you can get in and submit that paperwork. Not on time, early. Come on. And when we think about those assets, capital assets, that's the funding, that's the materials, that's the locations, all the tangible things. Human resources, that's going to be anybody living and breathing who can help us. All right. But just to kind of condense it a little bit, band leadership. You've got chapter members. These are the people who are working at your school, your district leaders, other chapters, your national leadership team, your NHQ staff. If this is someone who can be pulled in to assist you doing work you're doing, human resource, please do not feel afraid to reach out and ask for help. That's what we do. That's what we are here for. And when you think about strategic resources, this comes down to problem solving. This comes down to thinking about how you can align your capital resources and your human resources in a way to maximize everyone and everything's strength. And this is a skill you can develop. It just takes practice. You just have to intentionally do it. So if you as a chapter happen to come across a problem, strategic thinking is going to help you figure out which one of your human resources you need to reach to for that. How you can take some of those capital resources you have and turn them around to get the job done. All right. When we think about rebuilding and building, the most important thing is that everybody should take part. And understanding, especially when you're a leader in your chapter, that each person has different skill sets and different strengths that they can contribute to helping the team be successful. So sometimes it's identifying those strengths that other people have and bringing them in that place. And a lot of the times you'll notice other people may be more aware of your strengths than you are. You may be more aware of where someone else flourishes than they do. So please feel free to tell them. Please let them know. Please gas them up. Please give them, the ginger. Let them know. Let them know. So when you're working together, we work smarter before we work harder. We are trying to avoid burnout. And accountability is key. I'm circling back around to it again. We have to make sure that we build in ways to hold each other accountable. So the first is to evaluate your workloads. Here's what I want y'all to think about. When we look back to the 5 goals, right? Your chapter has done some assessment. You've identified 5 areas where you want to be stronger and be better. Are you all taking on more than you should? If, Chi Nu Omega is taking on more than they should, and these things, one, don't align with Tau Beta Sigma purposes and values, doesn't align with our national programming, it doesn't align with our school's mission, it doesn't align with who our band is, it doesn't align with our own personal goals, why are we doing it? Should we be doing it? Is each person even contributing to the things we're doing? Are we all doing what we're supposed to do? So I want you to think about it in the sense of being, we're all independent individuals, but we come together to build our chapters and to serve our programs. So if you were to stop engaging for 4 weeks, would anyone notice that you're not participating? If the answer is no, you need to evaluate your contributions. You might not be present enough. If the answer is yes, everything would crumble and fall apart, you need to evaluate your contributions. You're doing too much. The answer should be yes, my presence will be missed during that time period, but we have things in place to ensure that everyone can still continue on as needed. So that's one of the reasons why we want to make sure that all the many hands are participating. There should not be an instance where only 2 and 3 and 4 people are doing all the work, and you've got at least 12 folks who are listed as active on their roster. We have a problem. Okay, so if we notice a situation where someone is not meeting the mark, we need to talk to them, not talk around them, not talk about them, talk to them. If you notice that someone is burning out, talk to them. Don't talk about them, don't talk around them, talk to them. And as an individual, it is okay to say no. It is okay to say not right now. It is okay to say not in this capacity. Sure, I can help you, but I can't completely go through and proofread your whole paper. Get someone else to do it, give it to me, I can give it a skim, make sure you're fine. Okay. All right, so wrapping it up here, I've got a couple more slides for you. The next one is to record and reflect. And I think documentation is a love letter that you write to your future self. I love that. The educator in me loves that, because if there are 3 words that you learn and you have to teach, it is documentation, documentation, and what? Documentation. So you want to record what you're doing, you want to reflect on what you're doing, and you want to inspect what you're doing. Documentation will help you do that. All right. And then also, if things go wrong, like one of the previous quotes says, you then know how you can react and how you can step in and do things for that. All right. So we want to make sure that we are being consistent with documenting things, that we are accurate, and that we use it to help us to do better. All right. So, one of the first things, y'all, general business meeting, chapter meeting, you should be meeting more than once a month. Okay. Because having a 4-hour chapter meeting once a month, that's not okay. Don't do that to yourself. That is not appropriate. At the very least, you need to aim for bi-weekly meetings that last no more than 2 hours, 2.5 at a stretch. Because after that, you're done. Everybody's going to check out. I know that we have chapters who meet once a week, and they meet for like an hour, maybe an hour and a half tops, because it just works for them. But you should not be meeting once a month. You need to establish a sense of regularity and consistency and checking in with each other. And then that will help you to establish those firm, those fair, and those consistent expectations. When it comes to record keeping, once again, keep your chapter files in accessible locations. Everyone should be able to get to them. We shouldn't be fumbling around trying to find things we need. Keep copies of receipts. Hello, budget. Keep copies of receipts. Okay. You want to create officer and share notebooks, or like digital folders even, and update them with helpful information and tips that you can share with from outgoing to incoming officers. This is a way for you to share your knowledge. It's a way for you to ensure that the people who are coming behind you might not have to struggle. Okay. These notebooks, these folders should be passed to incoming officers within 1 to 2 weeks of elections. All right, so we have elections, our officers have been elected, they've been installed. Within 1 to 2 weeks, they should have the documents they need. They should have their folders. Outgoing and incoming should have met and had a conversation. If you have someone who's going to remain in the same position for another term, they need to make sure that all of the documents in the folders have been updated within those 1 to 2 weeks. All right, this is not something that you want to dilly and dally about. Succession planning goes so much more smoothly when we are building in a cadence of, once again, consistency. I know that if I'm the incoming secretary, I'm going to get access to the email. I'm going to get the passwords. I'm going to get all of our previous messages and minutes. I'm going to have all of that. That's going to help me be successful in the future. The next thing is to reflect on your successes and your failures. Keep note of what works for you and what doesn't work for you, because then you can make adjustments in the future. All right. If we notice that we held a fundraiser that happened to be during, a time of the year where everybody was busy, everybody was all over the place, it didn't go that well, maybe we can then not just not do the fundraiser again, but we could do it at a different time of year and see if that works for us. But the way for us to know it is to what? Document our things. All right. The last one I've got here for you is to reaffirm and to reassure. I think that foundationally tenets of our organization are to embrace sisterhood and to be the best that we can to and with each other. And a lot of time that requires kindness. It requires patience. Oh, tolerance. Even Mr. Rogers said it. Come on. Look, joy in others' achievement. Come on, Mr. Rogers, give us the word. So when we are working with each other, we want to do our best to build each other up. Okay. And growth is always the goal. So when we say a cheerfulness at all times and under all circumstances, this does not mean you have to be all smiles all the time, but that you maintain a sense of composure and a positive outlook. And that can go a long way because you never know who is watching you. You never know how simply trying to keep that positive mindset is going to affect the way that you move, okay? And the way that you react to situations. Often there are people who are observing us, watching us, learning from us, and we have no idea. And so the way that we react to things and the way that we interact with others can help shape how other people move throughout this organization. Take care of each other, because what we don't want to see are individuals falling apart and others just kind of standing by watching it. That doesn't mean you have to step in and be someone's caregiver necessarily. Sometimes it comes down to simply referring them to someone who can help them. So, it comes down to setting boundaries for yourself. Your chapter is only as strong as its members. So if you need help, say so. There is nothing weak about asking for help. In fact, there's strength in that because you're recognizing an area where you could use some additional support. Another thing, celebrate your wins. We get stuck in the day-to-day of doing work, and that often weighs us down. And we don't take time to reflect on all that good work we've done. So take a moment to acknowledge everything that you have accomplished, and don't be afraid to toot your own little horn. Share that with others too, because that could inspire other people to go out and make even bigger of a difference. So at the crux of it, you want to leave it better than you found it. If your band and your chapter are better than they were, then when you joined, then you did what you were supposed to do. So that's what we want to do. We want to leave a positive impact on our programs and build them up to where they can continue to strive and to be successful in the future. So as long as you are going out and doing the work and doing the good work, you'll be fine. Please know that there are folks, you've got counselors, you've got CVAs who are more than willing, district officers who will step in and help you to accomplish some of those things if you need us to. It doesn't always have to be a chapter visit or a retreat. It could simply be a conversation where we sit online for an hour and talk through some of the things you want to do. So if you want or need us, please don't hesitate to reach out. If at this time, I'm gonna say thank you for your time because you could have been anywhere else and you chose to be here with us. So if you have questions, I will take those. You can ask them now. You can email them to me at a later date. And I'll drop my email in the chats. Oh, and as promised, I think we've got the link, a link to a version of this presentation. So I wish it was clickable. It's not. So if you want, you can scan that there QR code and put that link into your browsers. I would add an extra B, Tau Beta Beta Sigma. So thank y'all. I'm